I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend for the weekend. Sarah Johnson stared at the tall, well-dressed man sitting across from her in the quiet corner of the coffee shop. His expensive watch caught the light as he nervously tapped his fingers on the table. The seriousness in his eyes made her stomach tighten with unease. Just 30 minutes ago she had been enjoying her coffee break from her job at the community center, and now this stranger, this billionaire businessman, was offering her money to play a role. Mr. Daniels, I don't understand why you'd ask me this. We only met yesterday when you came to donate to the center, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her confusion. She tucked a strand of her dark curly hair behind her ear, trying to make sense of his bizarre request. Alexander Daniels, heir to the Daniels real estate empire and one of the city's most eligible bachelors according to every business magazine, leaned forward. Call me Alex, please. And I know this sounds crazy, but I'm desperate. My parents are pressuring me to settle down with someone from their social circle. Someone they've picked out. They've been setting me up with the daughters of their friends for months. Sarah took another sip of her coffee, still skeptical. And how exactly would I fit into this picture? My parents are traditional, old-fashioned. They have certain expectations about who I should marry. He paused, looking uncomfortable. I thought if I brought home someone they wouldn't approve of, they might stop pressuring me altogether. The implication of his words hit Sarah like a cold shower. So you want to bring me home because I'm black? To shock your parents? Her voice rose slightly as anger flared inside her chest. Alex winced, realizing how terrible it sounded. That's not exactly. That's exactly what you meant, Sarah interrupted, already reaching for her bag. I'm not interested in being used as some kind of prop in your family drama. Wait, please, Alex said quickly, reaching across the table but stopping short of touching her arm. I'm explaining this all wrong. Yes, my parents would be surprised because you're different from the women they've been pushing on me, but I chose you specifically because of how you handled yourself yesterday. Sarah paused, her hand still on her bag. When I came to the community center, I watched you manage that difficult situation with the teenagers. You were firm but kind. You showed leadership and compassion. Those are qualities I admire, qualities my parents should value more than social connections. Sarah slowly settled back into her seat, still wary. Flattery doesn't change the fundamental problem here. Alex nodded, running a hand through his dark hair. You're right. But I'm offering $50,000 to the community center, regardless of your answer. And if you agree to help me this weekend, there will be another $50,000 when it's over. Sarah's eyes widened. The community center was struggling for funding. They had been forced to cut back on several programs for at-risk youth. $100,000 would make an enormous difference. I don't want to deceive anyone, she said finally. It's just for one weekend, Alex insisted. My family is hosting a party at our estate outside the city. I need to make an appearance, and I need someone by my side who isn't the society darling my mother has picked out for me. Sarah studied him carefully. Despite his privilege and obvious wealth, there was something in his eyes that seemed genuinely troubled. And after this weekend, what happens? Alex shrugged. We go our separate ways. No strings attached. You'll have helped the community center, and I'll have bought myself some time away from my parents' matchmaking. Time for what? Time to figure out how to live my own life instead of the one they've mapped out for me. For the first time, vulnerability showed through his confident facade. Sarah took a deep breath, considering her options. She thought about the children at the center who needed better resources, the programs they'd had to cancel, the difference this money could make. I have conditions, she said finally. Alex straightened in his chair, hope flashing across his face. Name them. First, I'm not going to act like someone I'm not. I'll pretend to be your girlfriend, but I won't pretend to be anything else. Agreed. Second, if anyone asks, we met through my work at the community center. That's close enough to the truth. Alex nodded. That works perfectly. Third, you make the donation to the center before we leave, not after. $50,000 now, $50,000 when we return. I can transfer the first payment today, Alex said without hesitation. Sarah took another deep breath. Last condition. If at any point I feel uncomfortable or disrespected, by you or your family, I walk away, no questions asked, and you still make the second donation. Alex considered this for a moment, then nodded. Deal. He extended his hand across the table. Sarah hesitated for a second before shaking it. His grip was firm, his hand warm against hers. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a huge mistake, but the thought of what this money could do for the center overrode her doubts. We leave Friday morning, Alex said, releasing her hand. Pack for a 3-day weekend. The estate has a pool and tennis courts. There will be a formal dinner Saturday night. I'll need to get someone to cover for me at work, Sarah said, already mentally reviewing her schedule. I'll send a car for you at 8, Alex added, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a business card. My personal number is on there. Text me your address. As Sarah took the card, their fingers brushed, and she felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. She quickly attributed it to nerves about the unusual arrangement. Alex stood, straightening his already perfect suit. Thank you, Sarah. I know this is strange, but I appreciate your help more than you know. After he left, Sarah sat alone in the coffee shop, turning his business card over in her fingers, wondering what she had just agreed to. A weekend pretending to be the girlfriend of one of the wealthiest men in the city, all to help her community center and to help him avoid an unwanted setup. What could possibly go wrong? As it turned out, everything. Friday morning arrived with unexpected nerves fluttering in Sarah's stomach. She had barely slept, alternating between excitement about the community center's windfall and anxiety about the deception she had agreed to participate in. The first donation had come through as promised, a wire transfer that had the center's director calling her in tears of gratitude. Now, standing on the sidewalk outside her modest apartment building with a weekend bag at her feet, Sarah questioned her decision for the 100th time. The neighborhood was coming to life around her. Kids rushing to school, shop owners raising their security gates, the familiar rhythm of the community she loved. A sleek black car pulled up precisely at 8 o'clock, looking completely out of place among the older vehicles that lined her street. The driver, a middle-aged man in a crisp uniform, stepped out and approached her. Miss Johnson? I'm Thomas, Mr. Daniel's driver. May I take your bag? Sarah nodded, suddenly feeling the stares of her neighbors. Mrs. Rivera from the second floor paused while walking her dog, eyebrows raised in surprise. Sarah gave her a small wave as Thomas opened the car door, revealing Alex sitting in the back seat, focused on his phone. He looked up as Sarah slid in beside him, his expression brightening. Good morning, he said, putting his phone away. Did you sleep well? Not really, Sarah admitted, settling into the buttery soft leather seat. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole situation. Alex looked genuinely concerned. Having second thoughts? About 50 of them, Sarah said with a nervous laugh. But the center received your donation yesterday. Our director was over the moon. I'm glad, Alex said, his smile reaching his eyes. Sarah noticed they were a warm hazel color, with tiny crinkles at the corners when he smiled genuinely. I meant what I said about admiring the work you do there. As Thomas merged into morning traffic, Alex handed Sarah a cup of coffee from the console between them. I remembered you take it black from the coffee shop. Sarah accepted the cup with surprise. Thank you. It was a small gesture but thoughtful. She hadn't expected him to notice such a detail. It's about a 2-hour drive to the estate, Alex explained, loosening his tie slightly. I thought we could use the time to get our story straight and get to know each other better. My parents will ask a lot of questions. Sarah nodded, taking a sip of her coffee. That makes sense. Where did we meet again? At the community center. That's simple enough and close to the truth, Alex confirmed. But we should decide how long we've been seeing each other. Not too long, Sarah suggested. A few weeks, maybe? Long enough that you'd bring me home to meet your parents, but not so long that it seems strange they haven't heard of me before. Alex nodded approvingly. Good thinking. Let's say we met a month ago when I came to discuss the center's funding needs. We started seeing each other 2 weeks later. And why did you wait until now to introduce me to your family? Sarah asked. Alex's expression darkened slightly. Because my parents have been pushing hard for me to reconnect with Olivia Westfield. Our families have known each other forever, and they think we're perfect for each other on paper. Are you and Olivia close? We grew up together, Alex admitted. We dated briefly in college, but it didn't work out. She's not a bad person, just not right for me. But my parents never accepted that. Sarah studied him for a moment. So I'm not just a shock tactic to upset your parents. I'm specifically meant to derail their plans for you and Olivia. Alex had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. When you put it that way, it sounds manipulative. It is manipulative, Sarah pointed out. But at least now I understand the full picture. She hesitated before adding, your parents they won't be cruel, will they? The question hung in the air between them. Alex took a long time to answer. My father is reserved. Old school business mentality. He judges people by their accomplishments and connections. Alex chose his words carefully. My mother follows his lead in most things. They won't be overtly rude, but they might be cold. Sarah nodded slowly, processing this information. And how does a community center director's accomplishments measure up in their world? In their world? Not very high, Alex admitted honestly. But that's their flaw, not yours. The car's interior fell silent as Sarah gazed out the window. The urban landscape was gradually giving way to more affluent suburbs, houses growing larger and further apart, lawns more manicured. Tell me about yourself, Alex said finally, breaking the silence. Beyond what I already know about your work. Where did you grow up? Do you have siblings? The simple question seemed to reset the tension that had been building. Sarah found herself relaxing slightly as she told him about growing up with 3 brothers in a small house just outside the city, her father's job as a high school math teacher, her mother's work as a nurse. They sound like good people, Alex said when she finished. They are, Sarah agreed. They taught us the value of education and community service. What about your family? Beyond the obvious wealth and status, I mean. Alex shifted in his seat. My grandfather built the company from nothing. My father expanded it internationally. I was raised to continue the legacy, to put the business first, always. His voice took on a rehearsed quality as if reciting a familiar script. Family dinner conversations revolved around deals and acquisitions. My mother ran the household with the same efficiency my father ran the company. Sounds structured, Sarah observed. That's one word for it, Alex agreed with a humorless smile. What they never understood is that I wanted to use our resources differently. I believe business should serve the community, not just shareholders. Is that why you came to the center? Sarah asked, genuinely curious now. Alex nodded. Part of my ongoing battle with my father. I've been trying to establish a corporate foundation focused on education and community development. He sees it as a distraction from our core business. The conversation flowed more naturally after that. They discussed their education. Sarah had worked her way through state university. Alex had attended an Ivy League school. Their favorite books, she loved historical fiction. He preferred biographies of innovators. And their hobbies, she enjoyed cooking. He was an amateur photographer. By the time Thomas announced they were approaching the estate, Sarah felt she had a better understanding of Alex Daniels. He was privileged but not entirely blind to it, trapped in family expectations but trying to carve his own path. It didn't excuse his scheme to use her as a prop in his family drama, but it made him more human in her eyes. The car turned onto a private road lined with ancient oak trees. As they rounded a curve, the Daniels family estate came into view, and Sarah couldn't suppress a gasp. The house was a sprawling mansion of stone and glass, surrounded by meticulously landscaped gardens and with what appeared to be a lake glimmering in the distance. This is where you grew up? Sarah asked wide-eyed. One of the places, Alex replied, a hint of discomfort in his voice. My parents split their time between here, our apartment in the city, and houses in Aspen and the Hamptons. The car pulled up to the front entrance, where a woman in a housekeeper's uniform stood waiting. As Thomas opened the car door, Alex leaned close to Sarah. Remember, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear, you're here because we care about each other. The rest is just details. Sarah nodded, her heart suddenly racing. As she stepped out of the car and took in the magnificence of the estate, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a different world entirely. One with rules she didn't understand and expectations she couldn't meet. The weekend performance was about to begin, and she wasn't entirely sure she remembered her lines. Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper who had been with the Daniels family for over 20 years, greeted them at the door with professional warmth. Welcome back, Mr. Alexander. Your parents are in the solarium having their morning coffee. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds, Alex replied with genuine affection. This is Sarah Johnson, my guest for the weekend. The older woman smiled at Sarah, her eyes quickly taking in everything from Sarah's sensible travel outfit to her natural hairstyle. If she had any thoughts about Alex bringing home a black woman, she kept them professionally hidden. Very pleased to meet you, Ms. Johnson. I've prepared the blue guest suite for you. Would you like to freshen up before meeting Mr. and Mrs. Daniels? Sarah glanced at Alex, who gave her an encouraging nod. That would be wonderful, thank you. As Mrs. Reynolds led them up a grand staircase, Sarah tried not to gawk at her surroundings. The interior of the mansion was even more impressive than the exterior, with soaring ceilings, museum-quality artwork and furniture that looked too perfect to actually use. Your home is beautiful, Sarah said quietly to Alex as they walked down a long hallway. It's my parents' home, he corrected gently. I have an apartment in the city, remember? This is where I grew up, but I don't spend much time here anymore. Mrs. Reynolds stopped at a set of double doors, opening them to reveal a spacious bedroom suite decorated in shades of blue and cream. Here we are, Miss Johnson. Mr. Alexander, your usual room is prepared as well. Shall I tell your parents you'll join them in 20 minutes? Perfect, thank you, Alex confirmed. After the housekeeper departed, Sarah walked slowly into the room, taking in the four-poster bed, sitting area with a fireplace, and a wall of windows overlooking manicured gardens. This is the guest room? She asked incredulously. Alex looked embarrassed. It's one of them. The blue suite is usually reserved for special guests. Sarah raised an eyebrow. And what makes me special? You're with me, he said simply, his gaze holding hers for a moment longer than necessary. The statement hung in the air between them until Alex cleared his throat and continued. My room is just down the hall if you need anything. I'll come back in 15 minutes to escort you to the solarium. Left alone, Sarah took a few moments to process the opulence surrounding her. The bathroom was larger than her entire apartment, with a marble shower and soaking tub that could fit 4 people. She splashed cold water on her face, reapplied her lipstick, and gave herself a stern pep talk in the mirror. You can do this. It's just one weekend. Think of the community center. When Alex knocked on her door 15 minutes later, Sarah was composed and ready, at least outwardly. Inside, her stomach was tied in knots. You look great, Alex said approvingly as she joined him in the hallway. He'd changed from his travel clothes into casual but clearly expensive weekend wear, dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt that complemented his eyes. I feel like I'm about to face a firing squad, Sarah admitted. Alex took her hand, his touch reassuring. Just be yourself. That's who I want them to meet. The gesture felt natural, though Sarah reminded herself it was just part of their act. Still, his hand was warm around hers as they descended the stairs and made their way through the house. The solarium was a glass-enclosed space filled with tropical plants and comfortable seating, bathed in morning sunlight. 2 people were seated at a small table, the remains of breakfast between them. Richard Daniels was exactly as Sarah had imagined, tall and distinguished with silver-streaked dark hair, impeccably dressed even for a casual morning at home. Catherine Daniels was a surprise, petite and blonde, looking younger than her years, with a delicate beauty that seemed at odds with the steel in her eyes as she assessed Sarah. Alexander, darling, Catherine said, rising to greet her son with a kiss on both cheeks. We were beginning to think you might not make it this weekend. I wouldn't miss Father's birthday, Mother, Alex replied smoothly. Richard Daniels remained seated, evaluating Sarah with uncomfortably direct scrutiny. And who is your guest? He asked, though his tone suggested he was more interested in why she was there than who she was. This is Sarah Johnson, Alex said, his hand now resting lightly on the small of her back. Sarah, these are my parents, Richard and Catherine Daniels. Sarah stepped forward with the confidence she used in professional settings. It's a pleasure to meet you both. Thank you for having me this weekend. Catherine's smile didn't reach her eyes. How lovely. And how did you and Alexander meet, Sarah? Before Sarah could answer, Alex spoke up. Sarah runs the Westside Community Center. I met her when I was exploring partnership opportunities for the foundation project I've been developing. Richard's expression hardened slightly at the mention of the foundation, but he maintained his composure. I see. And what exactly does this community center do, Ms. Johnson? Sarah straightened her shoulders slightly. We provide educational support, after-school programs, job training, and social services to underserved neighborhoods. We focus particularly on at-risk youth and family stability. How admirable, Catherine murmured in a tone that made it clear she found it anything but. And where did you study for such community work? State University, Sarah replied evenly. I have a master's in social work and nonprofit management. Richard's eyebrow twitched slightly. The only indication he gave that State University was several tiers below his expectations for his son's partner. Sarah's program has shown remarkable success rates, Alex added, his voice taking on the enthusiastic tone he used when discussing projects he cared about. 80% of the teens who complete their leadership program go on to college, compared to a 30% district average. Statistics are certainly important, Catherine said dismissively. She turned to Sarah with a practiced smile. Do you play tennis, dear? We have a lovely court and the weather is perfect this morning. I'm afraid I don't, Sarah admitted. Golf perhaps? Richard inquired, his tone suggesting her answer would determine her worth. No, sir. Though I do enjoy swimming, Sarah added, trying to find some common ground. Well, we have a beautiful pool, Catherine said, brightening slightly. Perhaps you'll find time to use it this weekend. Her gaze flicked to her son. Alexander, did you mention to Sarah that Olivia will be joining us for dinner tonight? Her parents are in Europe, so we simply had to include her. Alex's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. No, Mother, you didn't mention that when we spoke. It must have slipped my mind, Catherine said with manufactured innocence. You two have always been such good friends. I'm sure Sarah won't mind sharing you for one evening. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Sarah felt Alex's hand pressed slightly more firmly against her back, a silent request for support. I look forward to meeting Olivia, Sarah said smoothly. Alex has mentioned her. Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly, clearly wondering what exactly her son had shared. Before she could inquire, Mrs. Reynolds appeared in the doorway. Mr. Daniels, the landscaper, is here to discuss the arrangements for tomorrow's party. Richard stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Duty calls. Ms. Johnson, welcome to our home. I'm sure we'll have more time to become acquainted over the weekend. After he left, Catherine checked her delicate watch. I should review the party details with the caterer. Alexander, why don't you show Sarah around the grounds? Lunch will be at 1. Once Catherine had departed, Alex released a breath he seemed to have been holding. Well, that went about as expected. They hate me, Sarah stated flatly. They don't know you, Alex corrected. But I'm sorry about Olivia. That was a classic mother move. She's trying to create an uncomfortable situation. Sarah shrugged, affecting a confidence she didn't entirely feel. I knew what I was signing up for. She walked over to the windows, looking out at the sprawling gardens. So, are you going to show me around this palace of yours or what? Alex's expression softened into a genuine smile. It would be my pleasure. As they stepped outside into the sunshine, Sarah tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in her stomach. The first engagement with the enemy had gone more or less as anticipated, but she couldn't shake the sense that Catherine Daniels was already planning her counterattack. And something told her that Olivia's appearance at dinner was just the opening salvo. The grounds of the Daniels estate were even more impressive in daylight. Alex led Sarah along stone pathways that wound through formal gardens, past a tennis court where a groundskeeper was carefully maintaining the clay surface, and toward a shimmering lake at the far end of the property. My grandfather built this place in the 1950s, Alex explained as they walked. The original house was much smaller, but my father expanded it significantly after he took over the company. It's like something from a movie, Sarah remarked, pausing to admire a particularly beautiful rose garden. Did you really grow up here? It seems so formal for a child. Alex's expression grew distant. It wasn't always easy. There were a lot of rooms I wasn't allowed to enter, a lot of things I couldn't touch. He gestured toward a massive oak tree near the lake. That's why I spent so much time out here. I built a treehouse in that oak when I was 10. My father hated it, said it ruined the aesthetic of the landscape, but my grandfather insisted it stay up. Sarah could easily imagine a young Alex seeking refuge in a treehouse, away from the stifling perfection of the mansion. Is it still there? A smile played at the corners of his mouth. Want to see? Without waiting for her answer, he led her toward the tree. As they got closer, Sarah could make out a wooden structure nestled among the branches, far more elaborate than any treehouse she'd ever seen as a child. You need to understand that when I say treehouse, I mean a structure designed by a 10-year-old with access to professional builders, Alex said with a self-deprecating laugh. He helped her up a wooden ladder that had been integrated into the trunk of the tree. The treehouse was indeed impressive, a solid platform with railings, a peaked roof, and windows on all sides. Inside was a built-in bench, some weathered cushions, and bookshelves still holding faded paperbacks. This is amazing, Sarah said, running her hand along the smooth wooden railing. I can see why you loved it. Alex settled onto the bench, his long legs stretched out before him. This was my escape. I read every adventure book I could find up here. Sometimes I'd pretend I was somewhere else entirely. Sarah sat beside him, the bench just wide enough for two. Where did you go in your imagination? He looked thoughtful for a moment. All sorts of places. Pirate ships, distant planets, medieval castles. He laughed softly. Anywhere that wasn't here with all its expectations and rules. And now? Sarah asked. Where do you go to escape these days? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I'm not sure I do escape anymore. Maybe that's the problem. He turned to look at her directly. What about you? Where do you go when you need to get away? Sarah thought about the tiny balcony of her apartment, barely big enough for a chair and a potted plant, but where she often sat with a cup of tea watching the neighborhood below. I have my spots. Nothing like this though. They fell into a comfortable silence, the only sounds the rustle of leaves in the breeze and distant birdsong. It was strange, Sarah thought, how at ease she felt with him in this moment, how quickly they had moved from awkward business arrangement to something that felt almost like friendship. Thank you, Alex said suddenly. For what? For doing this. For being here. He gestured vaguely toward the mansion. I know it's not easy facing my parents and their judgment. Especially when this whole situation is unconventional. Sarah studied his profile against the backdrop of green leaves and blue sky. In this setting, away from the mansion and its oppressive formality, he seemed more authentic somehow. You're welcome. Though I'm still doing it for the community center, just to be clear. He grinned. Of course. Strictly business. As they climbed down from the treehouse, Alex checked his watch. We should start heading back for lunch. And I should warn you, my mother will have arranged for us to sit with her closest friends, all of whom will be dying to interrogate you. Wonderful, Sarah muttered, brushing dirt from her hands. More judgment. Alex surprised her by taking both her hands in his. The gesture was unexpected, intimate. Hey, look at me. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, you have nothing to prove to these people. You do incredible work that matters. Remember that. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She found herself momentarily speechless, acutely aware of how close they were standing, his hands warm around hers. The moment was broken by the distant sound of a car engine. Alex released her hands and stepped back, looking toward the main driveway. Someone's arriving, he noted, frowning slightly. We weren't expecting anyone until dinner. They made their way back toward the house in time to see a sleek convertible pulling up to the entrance. A tall, slender woman with perfectly styled blonde hair emerged, handing her keys to Thomas with practiced ease. Olivia, Alex said under his breath, his body tensing beside Sarah. She's early. Sarah took a deep breath, squared her shoulders and slipped her hand into his. When he glanced at her in surprise, she simply said, We're dating, remember? Might as well start acting the part. His grateful smile was worth the small deception. Olivia Westfield was even more intimidating up close. Model tall in designer casual wear with the kind of effortless beauty that came from generations of good breeding and expensive skincare. Her smile froze momentarily when she spotted Alex and Sarah approaching hand in hand. Alex, darling, she called out, her composure quickly recovered. I know I'm dreadfully early, but I simply couldn't wait until dinner to see you. It's been ages. She air-kissed his cheeks before turning her cool gaze on Sarah. And you must be Alex's friend. Catherine mentioned he was bringing someone. Sarah Johnson. Sarah introduced herself, extending her hand. I'm Alex's girlfriend, actually. Olivia's handshake was brief and limp. How lovely. I'm Olivia Westfield, an old friend of the family. Alex and I practically grew up together, didn't we, darling? Alex's smile looked strained. Olivia's father and mine have been business partners for decades. And our mothers were roommates at boarding school, Olivia added, linking her arm through Alex's free one, effectively flanking him between the two women. We share so much history. As they walked toward the house, Olivia dominated the conversation with references to people and events Sarah knew nothing about, punctuated with remember when. Stories clearly meant to exclude her. Alex tried several times to change the subject or include Sarah, but Olivia skillfully steered the conversation back to shared memories. By the time they reached the terrace where lunch was being served, Sarah was feeling decidedly like an outsider. Catherine Daniels' face lit up when she saw Olivia, rushing over to embrace her with genuine warmth. Olivia, my dear. What a wonderful surprise that you came early. Now you'll have more time to catch up with Alexander. Catherine's emphasis on catch up was not subtle. Lunch was an elaborate affair with several of Catherine's friends in attendance, women who eyed Sarah with polite curiosity tinged with disapproval. The conversation revolved around charity galas, mutual acquaintances and the upcoming social season. Sarah remained mostly silent, acutely aware of how out of place she was in this world of privilege and connections. Sarah runs a community center in the city, Alex said during a rare lull in conversation, his hand finding hers under the table. She's developed some incredible programs for at-risk youth. How interesting, said Mrs. Harrington, one of Catherine's oldest friends. My husband's company does a charitable golf tournament for urban youth every year. Perhaps you know of it? I'm not familiar with it, Sarah admitted. Well, it's quite prestigious, Mrs. Harrington continued. Very selective about which organizations receive funding. I'm sure Sarah's program would qualify, Alex interjected, a slight edge to his voice. The center has shown measurable improvements in graduation rates and reduced juvenile crime in the neighborhood. Statistics are important, of course, Catherine said dismissively, but there's also the matter of proper management and sustainability. So many of these community programs struggle with leadership issues. She turned to Sarah with a tight smile. How long have you been running this center, dear? 5 years, Sarah answered, sitting up straighter. We've expanded our programming and doubled our impact metrics in that time. 5 whole years. Olivia remarked with exaggerated surprise. That's impressive for someone so young. Before Sarah could respond, one of the staff members approached and bent to whisper something in her ear. Sarah listened, then excused herself from the table. Is everything all right? Alex asked, concern evident in his expression. Yes, just a call from the center, Sarah explained. One of my staff members needs to speak with me. I won't be long. As she followed the staff member into the house, Sarah could feel the collective gaze of the lunch party on her back. The call was legitimate. Her assistant director needed guidance on handling a situation with one of their teen program participants. But Sarah was secretly grateful for the break from the thinly veiled condescension at the table. After resolving the issue, Sarah took a moment to compose herself in the quiet of the house. She had known this weekend would be challenging, but the reality of just how much she didn't belong in this world was hitting harder than expected. Not running away already, are you? Sarah turned to find Richard Daniels watching her from the doorway of what appeared to be his study. His expression was unreadable, his posture relaxed but commanding. Not at all, Mr. Daniels, Sarah replied evenly. Just handling a work matter. He studied her for a moment, then gestured toward his study. Perhaps you'd join me for a moment? I find these ladies' luncheons tedious myself. Surprised by the invitation, Sarah followed him into the wood-paneled room. It was exactly what she would expect of a wealthy businessman's sanctuary: leather furniture, shelves of impressive-looking books, and what she suspected were original paintings on the walls. My son tells me you're quite accomplished in your field, Richard said, settling behind a massive desk. He speaks highly of your work. That's kind of him, Sarah responded, remaining standing until Richard indicated she should take a seat. I'm passionate about what we do at the center. Richard regarded her thoughtfully. Tell me, Ms. Johnson, what exactly is your relationship with my son? The directness of the question caught Sarah off guard. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks. We connected through my work at the center. I see. Richard leaned back in his chair. And are you aware that my son has a tendency to pursue causes rather than realistic business objectives? Sarah chose her words carefully. I know Alex is interested in finding ways for Daniel's real estate to give back to the community. Richard's expression hardened slightly. Yes, his foundation idea. A distraction from the core business that has sustained this family for generations. He steepled his fingers, studying Sarah intently. My son has always had a soft heart. It's admirable in some ways, but not conducive to running a multinational corporation. Sarah felt herself bristling on Alex's behalf. With respect, Mr. Daniels, I believe compassion and business success aren't mutually exclusive. A flicker of surprise crossed Richard's face. You speak your mind. Interesting. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. I had my team look into your background and your organization when Alexander mentioned he was bringing you this weekend. Sarah's heart sank. Of course he had investigated her. And your center has shown impressive results with limited resources, Richard conceded, flipping through papers. Your financial management is sound, your program outcomes measurable. It's more professionally run than I anticipated. The backhanded compliment was still a compliment, Sarah supposed. Thank you. Richard closed the folder. But I'll be direct, Ms. Johnson. My son is heir to a billion-dollar company. He has responsibilities and a position to maintain. His choice of partner matters not just to our family but to our shareholders and business associates. I understand your concern, Sarah replied, keeping her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. But with all due respect, who Alex chooses to date is his decision. Richard's laugh was short and humorless. You Americans and your romantic notions. In families like ours, marriage has always been as much about alliance as affection. He rose from his chair, signaling the conversation was ending. I appreciate your candor, Ms. Johnson. It's refreshing if somewhat naive. As Sarah followed him back toward the terrace, she wrestled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she was just playing a role for the weekend. Richard's approval or disapproval shouldn't matter. On the other hand, being dismissed as unsuitable based on her background rather than her character stung more than she wanted to admit. "One more thing," Richard said, pausing before they rejoined the group. "My son seems genuinely fond of you. I haven't seen him look at anyone that way in a long time, perhaps ever." Before Sarah could process this unexpected observation, Richard was already moving ahead, rejoining the lunch party with a practiced smile that revealed nothing of their conversation. Sarah took a deep breath and followed, finding her place beside Alex, who immediately leaned close. "Everything okay?" he whispered, his hand finding hers once more. Sarah squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Just fine." But as she glanced across the table at Catherine and Olivia, deep in animated conversation and occasionally glancing her way, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this weekend performance was becoming more complicated by the hour. After lunch, most of the guests departed, leaving the Daniels family and their weekend visitors to enjoy the afternoon. Catherine announced she was retiring to her room to rest before dinner, while Richard excused himself to handle some business calls. This left Sarah, Alex, and Olivia alone on the terrace, caught in an awkward triangle of tension. "I was thinking of taking a swim," Olivia announced, rising gracefully from her chair. "The weather is perfect for it. Alex, darling, will you join me? For old time's sake." Sarah felt Alex's hesitation beside her. "Actually," he began, "Sarah and I were planning to—" "I'd love to swim," Sarah interrupted, surprising both of them. "You mentioned the pool earlier and I brought my swimsuit." Olivia's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "How spontaneous. The pool house has changing rooms. I keep a suit here, of course. I'll meet you both there in 15 minutes. As Olivia sauntered away, Alex turned to Sarah with raised eyebrows. "You don't have to do this, you know. We could find an excuse to do something else." Sarah shook her head. "Running away would look like surrender. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I really do enjoy swimming. I was on the team in high school." Alex's expression brightened. "You never mentioned that." "You never asked," Sarah replied simply. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Daniels." 15 minutes later, Sarah emerged from the pool house changing room in a simple but flattering one-piece swimsuit she had packed just in case. She found Alex already in the water, swimming laps with strong, practiced strokes. He hadn't mentioned being a swimmer himself. The pool area was as luxurious as the rest of the estate, an Olympic-sized pool surrounded by elegant lounge chairs and lush landscaping, with a separate hot tub bubbling invitingly nearby. Sarah slipped into the cool water just as Olivia made her entrance. If Sarah's swimsuit was modest, Olivia's was the opposite, a designer bikini that showcased her model-perfect figure to full advantage. She paused at the pool's edge, ensuring both Alex and Sarah noticed her arrival before diving gracefully into the water. "I've missed this pool," Olivia sighed as she surfaced near Alex. "Remember when we used to spend entire summers out here? Your mother would have to bribe us to come in for dinner." "That was a long time ago," Alex said, glancing toward Sarah as if to include her in the conversation. Olivia ignored the hint. "Not so long. I've been thinking about those days a lot recently." She moved closer to him, lowering her voice. "Things were simpler then, weren't they? Before all the business pressures and expectations." Sarah, feeling distinctly like a third wheel, decided to swim a few laps. The physical activity would help clear her head, and it gave Alex space to handle Olivia however he saw fit. After all, this arrangement between them wasn't real. She had no right to feel the twinge of jealousy that had sparked when Olivia moved so close to him. As she swam, Sarah could hear snippets of their conversation. Olivia reminiscing about shared vacations and private jokes, skillfully reminding Alex of their long history together. Sarah tried to focus on her strokes, on the rhythm of her breathing, but she couldn't help wondering if there was still something between them. After several laps, Sarah paused at the far end of the pool to catch her breath. She was surprised when Alex swam up beside her. "You really are a good swimmer," he remarked, sounding impressed. "I told you I was on the team," Sarah replied, pushing wet hair from her face. "I know, but—" He hesitated. "I guess I'm learning there's more to you than I initially realized." Something in his tone made Sarah look at him more closely. His expression was thoughtful, his eyes studying her face with unexpected intensity. "Is everything okay?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Yes," Alex said, seeming to shake himself out of whatever thoughts had captured him. "Olivia's gone to get some drinks from the pool house. I thought I'd check on how you're doing with all of this." He gestured vaguely around them, encompassing the estate, the situation, everything. Sarah offered a small smile. "I'm surviving." Your father and I had an interesting conversation earlier. Alex's expression immediately shifted to concern. What did he say? Nothing I wasn't expecting, Sarah assured him. Just making it clear that I'm not exactly what they had in mind for you. Alex's jaw tightened. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's why I'm here, remember? Sarah meant the words to be light, a reminder of their arrangement, but they fell heavier than intended. Before Alex could respond, Olivia returned carrying a tray with 3 glasses of what appeared to be iced tea. She set the tray on a small table by the pool's edge. Come on you two, she called out. I'm feeling nostalgic and convinced the kitchen to make Richard's famous iced tea. Alex, your father still adds that special ingredient, right? Alex and Sarah swam back to the shallow end. As they climbed out of the pool, Sarah noticed how Olivia's gaze lingered on Alex, the appreciation in her eyes unmistakable as water dripped down his toned chest. The secret ingredient is bourbon, Alex explained to Sarah as he handed her a glass. It's become something of a family tradition during summer gatherings. Sarah took a small sip, the unexpected burn of alcohol mixing with the sweet tea. It was stronger than she expected. To old friends and new acquaintances, Olivia toasted, raising her glass with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. They settled onto lounge chairs, Sarah acutely aware of how at home Olivia looked in this setting, how naturally she belonged in Alex's world in ways Sarah never would. The conversation drifted to people they both knew from childhood, events Sarah had no part in, shared memories that excluded her completely. Sarah found herself drinking her tea faster than intended, partly from awkwardness and partly to cool down under the afternoon sun. When she finished, Olivia immediately refilled her glass from a pitcher on the tray. So, Sarah, Olivia said suddenly, turning her attention toward her for the first time since they'd sat down. Alex tells me you run some kind of community program? A community center, Sarah corrected, sitting up straighter. We provide educational support, job training, and social services to underserved neighborhoods. How admirable, Olivia said in the same dismissive tone Catherine had used earlier. I serve on several charity boards myself. It's so important to give back, don't you think? It's not charity when it's your own community, Sarah replied evenly. It's investment. Olivia's eyebrows rose slightly. I suppose that's one way to look at it. She turned to Alex. Your mother mentioned you've been making donations to Sarah's center. Always the soft touch, our Alex. The center's programs align perfectly with what I've been trying to establish with the foundation, Alex said firmly. It's not charity, it's smart community investment, exactly as Sarah said. Olivia smiled thinly. Well, you've always had your little projects, haven't you? She leaned closer to Sarah, lowering her voice conspiratorially. In college it was environmental activism. Then ethical investment banking. Now it's community centers. Alex likes to solve problems, don't you, darling? Always looking for a cause. The implication was clear. Sarah and her center were just Alex's latest project, something he would eventually lose interest in and abandon for the next worthy cause. The suggestion stung more than it should have, considering their arrangement wasn't even real. Some of us find meaning in trying to make the world better, Sarah replied, unable to keep the edge from her voice. Oh, absolutely, Olivia agreed smoothly. It's just that different people have different approaches. The Daniels family has always understood that real change happens through strategic business development, creating jobs and economic opportunity on a large scale. Wouldn't you agree, Alex? Alex looked uncomfortable caught between them. Both approaches have merit, he said diplomatically. Which is why I've been trying to integrate community development into our corporate strategy. Sarah stood suddenly, feeling lightheaded from the combination of sun and bourbon-laced tea. Excuse me for a moment. I need to use the restroom. As she walked toward the pool house, she could hear Olivia's voice drop to a confidential murmur. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but Olivia's words carried clearly across the pool area. She seems nice, Alex. Different from your usual type, of course, but I can see why you'd find her work interesting. Though I wonder if your parents understand this phase you're going through. Sarah didn't wait to hear Alex's response. Inside the pool house bathroom, she splashed cold water on her face, trying to clear her head and calm her emotions. Why was she letting Olivia's thinly veiled insults affect her so much? None of this was real. Her relationship with Alex was a business arrangement, nothing more. Yet something had shifted since they'd arrived at the estate. The way Alex looked at her sometimes, the genuine interest in his questions about her life, the protective way he tried to include her in conversations. It felt like more than just acting a part. Sarah took a deep breath, reminding herself of the terms of their agreement. One weekend. $100,000 for the community center. No emotional complications. When she emerged from the pool house, she found Alex alone by the pool, Olivia nowhere in sight. "Hey," he said, looking concerned. "Are you okay? You seemed upset." "I'm fine," Sarah assured him, forcing a smile. "Just needed a moment." "Where's Olivia?" "She went to shower and change for dinner," Alex explained. He hesitated, then added, "I'm sorry about her comments. She's always been territorial." "It's fine," Sarah repeated, gathering her towel. "She's exactly what I expected." Alex caught her arm gently as she turned to leave. "Sarah, wait. About what she said, about you being a project, that's not how I see you or the center. You know that, right?" The sincerity in his eyes made something flutter in Sarah's chest. "It doesn't matter how you see me, Alex. This isn't real, remember? We both know why I'm here." His grip on her arm loosened, but he didn't let go. "What if I told you I'm not sure that's true anymore?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them was prepared to address. Sarah felt her heart beating faster, acutely aware of his proximity, of the water droplets still clinging to his skin, of how easy it would be to lean into him. Instead she stepped back. "I think we both need to get ready for dinner. Your mother mentioned it's formal tonight." Alex's expression shifted, the vulnerable moment passing. "Yes, black tie. My father always insists on formal dinner for the night before his birthday celebration." "I should get back to my room then," Sarah said, gathering her things. "It'll take me a while to look presentable enough for a Daniels family dinner." As she walked back toward the house, Sarah could feel Alex's gaze following her. The arrangement that had seemed so straightforward back in the coffee shop was becoming increasingly complicated with each passing hour. Pretending to be Alex's girlfriend was turning out to be far more emotionally taxing than she had anticipated, especially when part of her was beginning to wish it wasn't pretend at all. Sarah stood before the full-length mirror in the blue guest suite, hardly recognizing herself. She had packed only one formal dress for the weekend, a deep burgundy gown with a modest neckline and fitted silhouette that she had worn to a fundraising gala for the community center last year. It was the most expensive piece of clothing she owned, purchased specifically because she occasionally needed to network with potential donors in formal settings. The dress looked elegant enough, she thought, smoothing her hands over the fabric. She had spent extra time on her hair and makeup, wanting to look her best for the formal dinner. Not for Alex's sake, she told herself, but because she refused to give his family or Olivia any reason to look down on her. A soft knock at the door interrupted her self-assessment. When she opened it, she found Alex standing in the hallway in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his dark hair neatly combed, looking every inch the billionaire heir he was. For a moment he simply stared at her, his expression unreadable. "You look beautiful," he said finally, his voice low. "Thank you," Sarah replied, feeling uncharacteristically shy. "You clean up pretty well yourself." He smiled, some of the tension between them from earlier at the pool easing. "May I?" he asked, offering his arm. As they descended the grand staircase together, Sarah felt like she was in some strange modern fairy tale, Cinderella at the ball, except she knew very well that the stroke of midnight would send her back to her real life. This world of wealth and privilege was just a temporary illusion. The formal dining room was something out of a period drama. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, priceless artwork, and a table set for 14 with fine china and silver. Staff moved efficiently around the edges of the room, ensuring everything was perfect for the evening ahead. Richard and Catherine were already there, greeting early arrivals. Richard in a tuxedo similar to Alex's, Catherine resplendent in an ice blue gown and diamond jewelry that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. "Alexander, there you are," Catherine said as they approached. Her gaze swept over Sarah, assessing the burgundy dress with a critical eye. "Sarah dear, how lovely. That color is quite bold." Before Sarah could respond, Richard stepped forward. "You look very elegant, Miss Johnson," he said, surprising her with what seemed like genuine approval. "Thank you, Mr. Daniels," Sarah replied. "And happy birthday for tomorrow." "Thoughtful of you to remember," Richard nodded. "I understand from Mrs. Reynolds that you and Alexander explored the grounds today?" "We did," Alex confirmed, his hand coming to rest lightly on the small of Sarah's back. "I showed Sarah the lake in the old treehouse." "That rickety thing is still standing?" Catherine asked with distaste. "I've been telling your father for years it should come down." "It's actually quite charming," Sarah said before she could stop herself. "It shows a different side of the estate, something personal and meaningful rather than just impressive." Catherine's smile tightened, but Richard chuckled unexpectedly. Well said, Ms. Johnson. I've made the same argument myself. Some things have value beyond their appearance. Sarah caught a flicker of surprise in Alex's expression at his father's support. Before they could continue the conversation, more guests began to arrive, and Catherine smoothly redirected their attention to greeting the newcomers. Alex guided Sarah to the bar set up in one corner of the room. Champagne, he offered. Please, Sarah accepted, feeling she might need the liquid courage to get through the evening. As Alex obtained their drinks, Sarah took the opportunity to observe the other guests. They were clearly all from the Daniels social circle. Old money, judging by their easy confidence and understated but clearly expensive attire. Several people greeted Alex warmly as they passed, their curious gazes lingering on Sarah. Alexander, darling, won't you introduce us to your lovely friend? An elderly woman with impeccably coiffed silver hair approached, accompanied by a distinguished-looking man who Sarah guessed was her husband. Mrs. Harrison, Mr. Harrison, Alex greeted them with genuine warmth. This is Sarah Johnson. Sarah, Elizabeth and Robert Harrison are old family friends and my godparents. How wonderful to meet you, Elizabeth Harrison said, taking Sarah's hand in both of hers. We've known Alexander since he was in diapers. Such a serious child, always with his nose in a book. Except when he was causing mischief, Robert added with a twinkle in his eye. Remember when he reprogrammed the sprinkler system to go off during your garden club meeting, Lizzie? Elizabeth laughed. Catherine was mortified, but Richard was secretly proud, I think. Always knew the boy had a brilliant mind. Sarah found herself warming to the couple immediately. Unlike Catherine's friends from lunch, they seemed genuinely interested in her, asking about her work at the community center without the condescension she had come to expect. What remarkable work, Elizabeth said when Sarah explained the center's programs. So much more meaningful than the endless charity galas we attend. Don't you think, Robert? Indeed, her husband agreed. Real impact requires more than writing checks at black tie events. It requires understanding the community's actual needs. Alex looked pleased by their response. That's exactly what I've been trying to explain to my father about the foundation project. Your father comes from a different era, Robert said thoughtfully. But he's not as immovable as you might think, Alexander. Keep making your case. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Olivia, who made a spectacular entrance in a designer gown that probably cost more than most cars. She immediately became the center of attention, graciously accepting compliments as she moved through the room. When she spotted their group, she made her way over, air-kissing the Harrisons before turning her dazzling smile on Alex. You look so handsome in formal wear, she said, straightening his bow tie with familiar ease. You always have. Sarah felt a flash of irritation at the proprietary gesture but said nothing. Elizabeth Harrison, however, raised an eyebrow at the interaction. Sarah dear, Elizabeth said, deliberately shifting attention back to her, Alexander tells us you grew up not far from here? That's right, Sarah confirmed. My father taught mathematics at Westside High School for 30 years. Johnson, not Thomas Johnson? Robert asked with sudden interest. Sarah looked at him in surprise. Yes, that's my father. I sit on the board of the State Education Foundation, Robert explained. Your father received our Excellence in Teaching Award several years ago. His approach to making advanced mathematics accessible to underserved students was revolutionary. I had no idea, Sarah said, touched by this unexpected connection. A brilliant educator, Robert continued. Now I understand where you get your commitment to community work. Dinner was announced before Olivia could reclaim center stage. As they moved toward the dining table, Alex leaned close to Sarah. You never told me about your father's award, he murmured. Sarah shrugged. You never asked about my family beyond the basics. There's a lot you don't know about me, remember? His gaze lingered on her face. I'm beginning to realize that. The seating arrangement had clearly been designed to separate them. Sarah was placed between Robert Harrison and one of Richard's business associates, while Alex was seated across and several places down, between Olivia and an elegant older woman Sarah didn't recognize. Throughout the elaborate meal, 5 perfectly executed courses paired with expensive wines, Sarah observed the dynamics at play. Catherine presided over the table with practiced charm, subtly directing conversation and ensuring Olivia had ample opportunity to engage with Alex. Olivia took full advantage, frequently touching his arm for emphasis when she spoke, laughing at his comments and referencing their shared past. Yet Sarah noticed something else too, how often Alex's gaze found hers across the table, The way he tried to include her in conversations even from a distance, his visible annoyance when Olivia monopolized his attention. When the topic turned to business during the main course, Sarah was surprised to hear Richard bring up Alex's foundation project. Alexander has been advocating for a new corporate responsibility initiative, Richard explained to the table at large. Quite passionate about it, in fact. It's more than corporate responsibility, Alex corrected. It's about strategic community investment that creates shared value between our business and the neighborhoods where we develop properties. And how does that translate to shareholder returns? Asked one of the business associates skeptically. Research shows that companies with strong community engagement have better long-term performance, Alex replied confidently. Lower turnover, stronger brand loyalty, reduced regulatory friction, and more sustainable growth. Alexander has always had such a big heart, Olivia interjected, placing her hand on his arm. Even in college he was always trying to save the world. It's not about saving the world, Alex said, gently but firmly removing her hand. It's about smart business practices that recognize our interdependence with the communities where we operate. He looked directly at Sarah as he continued. I've been studying the model Sarah has developed at her community center as a potential framework for our corporate foundation. All eyes turned to Sarah, who hadn't expected to become the focus of the business discussion. The center operates on a mutual benefit principle, she explained, straightening in her chair. Rather than treating community members as charity recipients, we engage them as partners in neighborhood revitalization. The programs create tangible value for all stakeholders. Residents gain skills and opportunities, local businesses find qualified employees, property values stabilize, and crime rates decrease. Precisely, Alex nodded. Applied to our real estate developments, this approach could transform how we interact with communities, turning potential opposition into collaborative partnership. Richard was watching Sarah with unexpected interest. And you've measured these outcomes, I presume? Yes, sir, Sarah confirmed. We track 27 different metrics across education, employment, housing stability, and public safety. I'd be happy to share our annual impact reports. I'd like to see them, Richard said, surprising everyone at the table, including his wife, whose smile had become decidedly fixed. The conversation moved on, but Sarah caught Alex's proud smile from across the table. She felt a small thrill of victory. She had held her own in this intimidating setting, and perhaps even impressed Richard Daniels. After dinner, the party moved to a grand salon for coffee and drinks. As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself drawn into conversation with various guests, many of whom seemed genuinely interested in her work once they realized Richard had shown approval. At one point, she noticed Alex deep in conversation with his father, their expressions serious. She wondered what they were discussing, but was soon distracted by Elizabeth Harrison, who linked her arm through Sarah's and guided her toward a quiet corner. You're quite special, you know, the older woman said without preamble. I'm sorry? Sarah said, confused by the comment. I've known Alexander his entire life, Elizabeth continued. I've seen the women he's dated over the years. Some chosen by himself, some, like Olivia, pushed forward by Catherine. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks. Mrs. Harrison. Elizabeth, please. Elizabeth, Sarah corrected herself. I think you might be misinterpreting things. Alex and I haven't been seeing each other very long. Time is irrelevant in matters of the heart, Elizabeth said with the confidence of someone who had lived long enough to know such truths. What matters is connection. And you too have it, whether you've fully recognized it yet or not. Before Sarah could formulate a response, they were interrupted by Catherine, who appeared with Olivia in tow. Elizabeth, darling, the Prestons are asking about your Mediterranean cruise, Catherine said smoothly. Would you mind terribly sharing your experiences? They're considering a similar trip next season. It was a transparent attempt to separate Sarah from the influential older woman, but Elizabeth merely smiled knowingly. Of course, Catherine. Sarah dear, we'll continue our chat later. As Elizabeth departed, Catherine turned to Sarah with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I hope you're enjoying the evening, Sarah. It must be quite different from what you're accustomed to. It's certainly a beautiful party, Sarah replied diplomatically. Olivia was just telling me about the most remarkable coincidence, Catherine continued. It seems her father's foundation is considering a grant program for community centers in the city. Wasn't that what you were discussing with Richard at dinner? That's right, Sarah confirmed, immediately wary of where this was heading. Olivia stepped forward, all gracious charm. I'd be happy to introduce you to my father's grant committee. They're always looking for promising projects in disadvantaged areas. The condescension was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah maintained her composure, remembering she was here for the community center, and a confrontation with Olivia wouldn't serve that purpose. That's very kind, she said evenly. I'd be happy to submit our program metrics and impact reports for their consideration. How professional, Olivia remarked with a thin smile. Most organizations at your level aren't so organized. Before Sarah could respond, Alex appeared at her side, his hand coming to rest protectively at the small of her back. There you are, he said, his smile warm as he looked at Sarah. I've been looking for you. Father wants to continue our conversation from dinner and specifically asked for you to join us. Catherine's smile faltered. Surely that can wait, Alexander. Sarah must be tired from such an overwhelming day. Not at all, Sarah replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. I'd be happy to speak with your husband about the center's model. As Alex guided her away, Sarah caught Olivia's expression, a mixture of surprise and calculation as if reassessing her approach. Thank you for the rescue, Sarah murmured as they crossed the room. Wasn't entirely altruistic, Alex admitted. My father really does want to speak with you. And seeing you handle my mother and Olivia so gracefully. He trailed off, a hint of admiration in his voice. You continue to surprise me, Sarah Johnson. As they approached Richard, who was speaking with Robert Harrison and several other men, Sarah felt a strange sense of belonging that she hadn't expected to experience in this world so different from her own. It wasn't that she suddenly fit in, but rather that she had found her own way to navigate this unfamiliar territory without compromising who she was. And when Alex's hand remained at the small of her back, steady and supportive, she couldn't help wondering if Elizabeth Harrison had seen something true about them after all, something beyond the pretense of their arrangement, something neither of them had anticipated when they made their deal in that coffee shop just days ago. The evening stretched late into the night. By the time the last guest departed, it was well past midnight. Sarah found herself emotionally and physically exhausted from hours of navigating complex social dynamics, yet strangely exhilarated too. After Richard excused himself to his study with a select group of business associates for cigars and brandy, and Catherine retired to her room complaining of a headache, Sarah slipped away from the remaining guests. The grand house was quieter now, the staff discreetly clearing away evidence of the evening's festivities. Sarah made her way to a small terrace she had noticed earlier, seeking a moment of peace and fresh air. The night was clear, stars visible above the carefully maintained gardens, a crescent moon casting soft light across the landscape. She leaned against the stone balustrade, breathing deeply, replaying moments from the dinner in her mind. Richard's unexpected interest in her work. Elizabeth Harrison's knowing words about her and Alex. The growing tension with Olivia, who clearly viewed her as a temporary obstacle rather than a serious rival. Escaping the madness? Sarah turned to find Alex approaching, his bow tie undone, jacket discarded, looking more relaxed than he had all evening. Just needed some air, she explained. It's been intense. He nodded, coming to stand beside her at the railing. I saw you slip away. Wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm fine, she assured him. Your father actually seemed interested in the center's model. He was, Alex confirmed. That's what we were discussing when I pulled you away from my mother and Olivia. He asked for a formal presentation of your metrics and methodology. Sarah looked at him in surprise. Really? I thought he was just being polite. Alex laughed softly. My father is never just polite about business matters. If he's asking for data, he's genuinely interested. He hesitated before adding, You impressed him, Sarah. That's not easy to do. Well, Sarah said, unable to suppress a small smile of satisfaction, that wasn't part of our original arrangement, but I'll take it as a bonus. Alex was quiet for a moment, looking out over the moonlit gardens. About our arrangement. He began, his tone turning serious. I need to tell you something. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness. What is it? He turned to face her fully. I didn't tell you the whole truth about why I asked you to come this weekend. What do you mean? Sarah asked, suddenly wary. Alex ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she had come to recognize as a sign of his discomfort. Yes, I wanted to discourage my parents' matchmaking with Olivia. That part was true. But there was more to it. He took a deep breath before continuing. After I visited the community center that day, I couldn't stop thinking about you. The way you handled the situation with those teenagers, your passion when you talked about the center's mission, Your refusal to be intimidated by me or my position. I was fascinated. Sarah stared at him, trying to process this revelation. So this whole thing was, what? A way to spend time with me? Not exactly, Alex clarified. I genuinely needed someone to help me fend off my parents' matchmaking efforts. But when I was thinking about who to ask, you were the only person who came to mind. He looked away, almost embarrassed. The donation to the center was real, I would have made it regardless. But I used it as leverage because I didn't think you'd agree to come otherwise. Sarah was silent, absorbing this new information. Part of her was flattered by his admission, another part unsettled by the manipulation, however well-intentioned. Why are you telling me this now? She finally asked. Alex looked back at her, his expression vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. Because I can't keep pretending this is just an act for me. Not after today. Not after seeing you hold your own with my father, charm the Harrisons, and handle Olivia with more grace than she deserved. He moved closer, his voice dropping. I brought you here because I wanted to get to know you better, Sarah. And now that I have, I don't want this to end tomorrow. Sarah's heart raced at his proximity, at the intensity in his eyes. Alex, You don't have to say anything right now, he interrupted gently. I just needed you to know the truth before tomorrow's party. Because when we leave here, I want to ask you on a real date, not as part of some arrangement, but because I want to see where this could go. Before Sarah could formulate a response, the glass doors to the terrace opened and Olivia stepped out. She paused when she saw them standing so close together, her expression briefly hardening before she composed herself. There you are, Alex, she said, her voice honey-sweet. Your mother asked me to find you. Apparently, there's some issue with tomorrow's seating arrangements that requires your input. Alex looked visibly annoyed at the interruption. I'm sure whatever she has planned is fine. She was quite insistent, Olivia pressed, moving closer to Alex. Besides, it's getting late. I'm sure Sarah must be exhausted after such a stimulating evening. So different from her usual routine. The subtle condescension in Olivia's tone wasn't lost on Sarah, but she maintained her composure. Actually, I often work late at the center. Night programs for working adults, emergency services, board meetings, we keep flexible hours. Something flickered in Olivia's eyes, perhaps surprise at Sarah's refusal to be intimidated. She recovered quickly, linking her arm through Alex's. Well, let's not keep Catherine waiting. She's already in a delicate mood. Alex glanced apologetically at Sarah. I should probably see what she wants. We'll continue our conversation later? Sarah nodded, watching as Olivia led him away, her body language possessive and triumphant. Alone on the terrace, Sarah tried to process Alex's unexpected confession. He had been interested in her from the beginning. Their arrangement had been, at least partially, a pretext for spending time with her. The revelation was both flattering and concerning. On one hand, the growing attraction she felt toward him wasn't one-sided. On the other hand, he had manipulated the situation, using the donation to her center as leverage to get what he wanted. Yet hadn't she done essentially the same thing? Agreed to this charade for the benefit of her center? Neither of them had approached this arrangement with entirely clean hands. Sarah sighed, looking out at the moonlit gardens. One more day, she reminded herself. Just one more day of navigating this complicated situation, and then she could return to her normal life and decide what, if anything, she wanted to pursue with Alex Daniels. Later, as she prepared for bed in the luxurious blue guest suite, Sarah heard a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper, holding a small silver tray with an envelope. Mr. Alexander asked me to deliver this to you, miss, the older woman explained. He was called into a late business discussion with Mr. Daniels and some associates. Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds, Sarah said, accepting the envelope. After the housekeeper departed, Sarah opened it to find a handwritten note. Sarah, I'm sorry about the interruption. My father and his business partners needed my input on a time-sensitive matter. Please meet me at the treehouse tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. before everyone else is awake. I'd like to finish our conversation without interruptions. Alex. Sarah traced her fingers over his handwriting, a smile tugging at her lips despite her misgivings. She set her alarm for 6:30 a.m., then settled into the most comfortable bed she had ever slept in, her mind racing with thoughts of Alex and his confession under the moonlight. The alarm sounded far too early for someone who had fallen asleep well after midnight, but Sarah forced herself awake, remembering Alex's note. A quick glance out the window showed the early morning mist still clinging to the gardens, the sky just beginning to lighten. She dressed simply in jeans and a soft sweater, ran a quick brush through her hair, and slipped quietly from her room. The house was silent at this hour, the staff not yet begun their day's work, the other occupants still asleep after the late night. Outside, the morning air was crisp and cool, dew dampening her shoes as she made her way across the lawn toward the massive oak tree. As she approached, she could make out Alex's figure already waiting in the treehouse, his silhouette visible through the early morning haze. He heard her footsteps and peered down through the wooden railings, his face breaking into a wide smile that made her heart skip. "You came," he called softly, his voice carrying in the quiet morning. "Your note was very mysterious," Sarah replied, climbing the ladder. Hard to resist. The treehouse looked different in the dawn light, more intimate somehow, the small space bringing them closer together as she settled beside him on the bench. He had brought a thermos of coffee and 2 mugs, which he filled and handed one to her. "I figured you might need this," he said. "I'm not a morning person either." Sarah accepted the mug gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her hands. "Thank you." "So, this urgent conversation couldn't wait until after breakfast." Alex smiled sheepishly. "I wanted to talk without my parents or Olivia interrupting. Today's going to be chaotic once everyone starts arriving for the birthday celebration." "Smart thinking," Sarah agreed, taking a sip of the perfectly prepared coffee. "What happened after Olivia whisked you away last night?" "My mother did need help with the seating chart, but it took all of 5 minutes," Alex explained. "Then my father called me into his study to meet with some business partners from Asia. By the time we finished, it was nearly 2 in the morning." He hesitated, then added, "Olivia was waiting outside the study when I came out. She wanted to talk about us. I had to be quite direct with her." "What did you tell her?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her tone neutral despite her curiosity. "The truth. That we dated briefly years ago, it didn't work out, and I'm not interested in revisiting the past." He ran a hand through his hair. "She didn't take it well. Kept insisting that my parents have expectations, that we make sense together professionally and socially." "She's not entirely wrong," Sarah pointed out. "You do come from the same world." Alex's expression grew serious. "That's the world I was born into, not necessarily the one I want to live in." He set down his coffee mug, turning to face her fully. "Which brings me back to what I was trying to tell you last night." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "I'm listening." "I meant what I said, Sarah. This weekend started as an arrangement, but it's become something more for me." His eyes held hers, sincere and unwavering. "I've spent my life surrounded by people who value appearances, connections, and status above all else. Meeting you, seeing how you lead with compassion and purpose, how your work creates real change in people's lives, it's challenged everything I thought I knew about success and meaning." Sarah was momentarily speechless, moved by the earnestness in his voice. "I know this is complicated," Alex continued when she didn't immediately respond. "There's the donation to your center, our different backgrounds, my family's expectations. But I can't pretend I don't feel something real developing between us." "Alex," Sarah began, uncertain how to articulate her conflicted feelings. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something too. But this weekend has been a fantasy, a glimpse into a world so different from mine. Tomorrow we go back to reality." "Then let's talk about reality," Alex said, taking her hands in his. "In reality, I'm a man who spent years trying to reconcile my family's legacy with my own values. You're a woman devoted to serving a community you believe in. Those two realities don't have to be incompatible." Sarah looked down at their joined hands. "Your parents would never accept me as more than a temporary distraction." "My parents don't control my life," Alex said firmly. "And they might surprise you. My father was genuinely impressed by your work." "There's a difference between respecting someone professionally and welcoming them into the family," Sarah pointed out. Alex gently tilted her chin up, bringing her gaze back to his. "Sarah, I'm not asking you to marry me. I'm asking for a chance to explore whatever this is between us, without the pretense, without the arrangement. Just us seeing where it might lead." The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't the practiced charm of a privileged playboy or the calculated interest of someone with ulterior motives. This was real vulnerability from a man who, despite his wealth and status, seemed genuinely afraid she might reject him. "Okay," Sarah said softly. Alex blinked, as if he hadn't expected her to agree so readily. "Okay." A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. "Yes. When we get back to the city, we'll go on a real date. No donations, no arrangements, no pretending. Just us seeing where this goes." The relief and joy that transformed Alex's expression made Sarah's heart flip in her chest. Before she could fully process what was happening, he leaned forward and kissed her, softly at first, then with growing intensity as she responded. His hands cradled her face with unexpected tenderness, and she found herself melting into the kiss, all her doubts temporarily forgotten. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alex rested his forehead against hers. "I've been wanting to do that since I showed you this treehouse yesterday." Sarah laughed softly. "Is that why you brought me up here? To recreate some childhood fantasy of kissing a girl in your treehouse?" "Maybe," Alex admitted with a mischievous grin that made him look younger, more carefree than she had seen him before. "Is it working?" Sarah's response was to lean in and kiss him again, surprising herself with her boldness. This time when they separated, they were interrupted by the distant sound of voices from the house. The staff was beginning to stir, preparing for the day ahead. "We should head back," Sarah said reluctantly. "Before someone notices we're both missing." Alex sighed but nodded in agreement. "The birthday celebration starts at noon. We'll barely have a moment alone until it's over." As they climbed down from the treehouse, Alex kept hold of her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "Whatever happens today with my parents, with Olivia, with anyone, remember what's real between us now. No more pretending." Sarah nodded, a mixture of excitement and apprehension fluttering in her stomach as they walked back toward the house, hand in hand in the golden light of early morning. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from an upstairs window of the mansion. Olivia, her expression hard as she observed their intimate moment, her mind already calculating her next move. By noon, the Daniels estate had transformed into a scene reminiscent of a society magazine spread. The sprawling back lawn was now covered with elegant white tents, floral arrangements in strategic locations, and a small orchestra playing classical music near the pool. Staff in formal uniforms circulated with trays of champagne and artfully presented hors d'oeuvres. Sarah stood beside Alex near the entrance to the main tent, greeting guests as they arrived. She had changed into the second nicest outfit she had packed, a royal blue sundress that complemented her complexion and was appropriate for an outdoor daytime event. "You look beautiful," Alex had whispered when he picked her up from her room, his eyes warm with genuine appreciation rather than the practiced compliment it might have been just a day earlier. Now, as they stood side by side, Sarah was acutely aware of every small touch between them. His hand occasionally brushing hers, his palm gently guiding her at the small of her back, the way he leaned close to explain who various guests were. Each contact sent a small thrill through her, a reminder of their morning in the treehouse and the reality beneath their public performance. "Alexander." A booming voice interrupted her thoughts as an older man approached, accompanied by a much younger woman. "Where have you been hiding yourself? Haven't seen you at the club in months." "Mr. Tanfield," Alex greeted him, shaking his hand. "I've been focused on some new business initiatives. This is Sarah Johnson, my girlfriend." "Sarah, Harold Tanfield is one of my father's oldest friends and business partners." Sarah extended her hand, noting the surprise that flashed briefly across Tanfield's face before he recovered his social grace. "Lovely to meet you, my dear. This is my wife, Melissa." Melissa Tanfield, who appeared to be in her early 30s despite her husband's obvious seniority, gave Sarah a sympathetic smile. "So nice to see a new face at these events. They can be rather repetitive when you know everyone already." Before Sarah could respond, Catherine Daniels appeared, elegantly attired in a designer dress and hat that would not have looked out of place at a royal garden party. "Harold, Melissa," she greeted them warmly. "So glad you could make it. I believe Richard was just asking after you. He's by the champagne fountain." She placed a hand on Tanfield's arm, subtly guiding him away. "Alexander, darling, would you mind checking on the caterers? There seems to be some confusion about the timing of the birthday toast." It was a transparent attempt to separate them, but Alex didn't immediately take the bait. "I'm sure the staff has it under control, Mother. I'd rather stay with Sarah." Catherine's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "It would only take a moment, dear. And I'm sure Sarah wouldn't mind getting better acquainted with some of our guests. Olivia was just saying she'd love to introduce Sarah to some of the younger crowd." On cue, Olivia appeared at Catherine's side, looking flawless in a pale pink designer dress that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. "Absolutely," she agreed smoothly. So many people are curious about Alex's new friend. The emphasis she placed on new made her meaning clear. Sarah was a temporary novelty, not someone to be taken seriously. But after the morning's revelations with Alex, Sarah found Olivia's tactics less intimidating than they might have been a day earlier. Actually, Sarah said with a pleasant smile, I'd love to meet more of Alex's friends. Why don't we both check on the caterers, Alex, and then Olivia can introduce me around? Olivia's perfectly composed expression faltered for just a moment, while Catherine looked briefly nonplussed by this deviation from her plan. Alex didn't bother hiding his pleased smile. Excellent idea, he agreed, taking Sarah's hand. We won't be long, Mother. Olivia, perhaps you could meet us by the rose garden in 15 minutes? Without waiting for a response, Alex led Sarah away, his thumb rubbing small circles on the back of her hand. Well played, he murmured once they were out of earshot. Though I think you've just elevated yourself from minor annoyance to serious threat in both their estimations. Good, Sarah replied with more confidence than she felt. I think it's time they recognized I'm not just going to disappear on cue. The celebration continued throughout the afternoon, a carefully orchestrated display of wealth and social standing. Richard Daniels held court near the main tent, accepting birthday wishes and engaging in what appeared to be business discussions disguised as social pleasantries. Catherine fluttered from group to group, ensuring everything ran perfectly while simultaneously managing the social dynamics of her guests. True to her word, Olivia introduced Sarah to various members of the Daniels social circle after she and Alex returned from their supposed errand with the caterers. The introductions were always technically polite but loaded with subtle cues that positioned Sarah as an outsider. This is Sarah, Olivia would say to each new group. She runs a community program in the city. Alex has taken quite an interest in her work. The pause before work was slight but deliberate, suggesting something entirely different. Sarah maintained her composure, correcting Olivia's description of the community center when necessary and engaging genuinely with those who showed interest in her work. To her surprise, not everyone in Alex's social circle was as judgmental as she had feared. Several people seemed genuinely interested in the center's programs, particularly younger guests who were involved in their own charitable initiatives. Alex introduced Sarah to the Harrisons last night, and they were absolutely charmed. Olivia mentioned to one group, her tone suggesting this was somehow surprising. Robert Harrison is even interested in her father's teaching methods. Thomas Johnson is your father? Asked a middle-aged woman who had been quietly listening to the conversation. I serve on the state education board with Robert. Your father's mathematics program for underserved schools has been a remarkable success. Sarah nodded, genuinely pleased by the recognition of her father's work. Yes, he developed it after noticing how many students were being left behind by traditional teaching methods. Fascinating, the woman said, ignoring Olivia's attempt to redirect the conversation. I'd love to hear more about it, and about your community center. My family foundation is always looking for effective programs to support. As the afternoon progressed, Sarah found herself gradually separated from Alex as various guests claimed his attention. She was making her way toward the refreshment tent when Richard Daniels unexpectedly fell into step beside her. Ms. Johnson, he greeted her with a nod. Are you enjoying the celebration? Yes, thank you, Sarah replied, surprised by his approach. It's quite impressive. Happy birthday again. Another year older if not wiser, Richard said with a small smile. Would you join me for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Curious and slightly apprehensive, Sarah followed him to a quieter area of the garden where several chairs had been set up for guests seeking respite from the festivities. I understand from Alexander that you met with my son this morning, Richard said once they were seated, his direct approach catching Sarah off guard. Yes, we did, she confirmed, wondering how he knew and what exactly Alex might have told him. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Alexander came to see me after breakfast. He was quite adamant about certain changes he wants to make, both personally and professionally. Sarah remained silent, unsure where this conversation was heading. My son informed me that your relationship is no longer a temporary arrangement, Richard continued, his gaze steady on her face. He also made it very clear that he intends to proceed with his foundation project with or without my approval, and that he sees your community center as a model for the initiative. Sarah's heart raced at this information. Alex had apparently gone directly to his father after their morning together, making his intentions clear on multiple fronts. Mr. Daniels, she began carefully, I understand this may not be what you had hoped for your son. Richard held up a hand, interrupting her. Ms. Johnson, I've spent 40 years building a business empire. In that time, I've learned to recognize determination when I see it. My son has never been as certain about anything as he was this morning when he spoke about you and this foundation project. He paused, his expression softening slightly. I've always wanted Alexander to show the same passion for the business that I have. It seems he has that passion, just directed somewhat differently than I anticipated. Sarah wasn't sure how to respond. This wasn't at all the conversation she had expected to have with Richard Daniels. I've made arrangements for you to present your community center's model to our board next month, Richard continued, surprising her further. If your metrics are as impressive as you suggested at dinner, there may be a place for your approach in our corporate strategy. That's very generous of you, Sarah managed, still processing this unexpected turn. It's not generosity, Ms. Johnson. It's business, Richard corrected, though without harshness. If your model can create value for both communities and our shareholders, it deserves consideration. He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. As for your personal relationship with my son, that is between the two of you. But I will say this, in business and in life, I've learned to value substance over appearance. You have shown remarkable substance, Ms. Johnson. With that, he left her sitting alone, stunned by what seemed like tentative approval from the last person she had expected to receive it from. Sarah had little time to process the conversation before she heard raised voices coming from nearby. Following the sound, she rounded a hedge to find Alex and Olivia in what appeared to be a heated discussion, partially concealed from the main party by a decorative garden wall. You can't be serious about her, Alex, Olivia was saying, her voice tight with anger. What would people say? What would it mean for your position in the company, in society? I don't care what people say, Alex replied firmly. And if my position in society depends on ignoring my own happiness, then it's not worth having. This is just another of your phases, Olivia insisted. Like the environmental kick in college or that year you wanted to work for that microfinance startup. You'll get bored playing savior to her community center and come back to where you belong. You don't know me at all if that's what you think, Alex said, his voice cold. I'm not playing at anything. Sarah's work has substance and impact, something I've been trying to bring to my family's company for years. And what about us? Olivia demanded. Our families have always expected. There is no us, Olivia, Alex interrupted firmly. There hasn't been for years if there ever truly was. Whatever our parents might have hoped for doesn't change that. Sarah began to back away, not wanting to eavesdrop further, but her movement caught Olivia's attention. The blonde woman's expression hardened when she spotted Sarah, her composure momentarily cracking to reveal genuine hurt and anger. Perfect timing, Olivia said coldly. Your charity case is here to rescue you, Alex. That's enough, Alex said sharply. Sarah deserves your respect, Olivia. Respect. Olivia laughed bitterly. For the woman who came here under false pretenses to manipulate your parents? Oh yes, the staff talks, Alex. Everyone knows this whole relationship was initially staged to avoid your parents' matchmaking. Sarah flinched at having their arrangement exposed so bluntly, but Alex moved to her side, taking her hand firmly in his. How it started doesn't matter, he said, looking at Sarah rather than Olivia as he spoke. What matters is what it's become. The genuine emotion in his voice brought unexpected tears to Sarah's eyes. Olivia looked between them, her anger giving way to resignation as she witnessed their unspoken connection. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. But I suppose you'll have to learn that for yourself. As Olivia walked away, returning to the main celebration with her dignity intact despite her defeat, Alex turned to Sarah with concern. Are you okay? I'm sorry you had to hear that. Sarah nodded slowly. I'm fine. But she wasn't entirely wrong, was she? This did start as a deception. Alex took both her hands in his. Maybe. But some of the best things in life come from unexpected beginnings. He smiled softly. My grandfather always said the straightest path isn't always the most meaningful one. Before Sarah could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of clinking glass, the signal that Richard's birthday toast was about to begin. They rejoined the main party just as Catherine was calling for everyone's attention. Thank you all for joining us to celebrate Richard's birthday, Catherine announced, her voice carrying across the gathered guests. Before the formal toast, Richard has asked to say a few words himself. Richard Daniels stepped forward, glass in hand, commanding the attention of the crowd with his mere presence. Thank you all for being here today, he began. Reaching another year provides a natural moment for reflection, on what we've built and on what legacy we hope to leave behind. His gaze found Alex and Sarah in the crowd before he continued. Recently, I've been challenged to reconsider what true success looks like. Is it merely in the buildings we construct and the profits we generate? Or is it also in the communities we help strengthen, the opportunities we create for others. A murmur went through the crowd at this unexpected philosophical turn from the typically business-focused Richard Daniels. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Daniels Real Estate will be launching a new corporate foundation, focused on strategic community investment and development. This initiative will be led by my son, Alexander, who has shown both the vision and determination to make it a reality. Sarah felt Alex stiffen beside her in surprise. His father had not mentioned this announcement during their earlier conversation. To those who know our family well, this might seem like a departure from our traditional business model, Richard continued with a small smile. But innovation has always been at the heart of our success, and this new chapter is no exception. He raised his glass. So today I celebrate not just another year of life, but the continuation of our family legacy through new perspectives and initiatives. To the future of Daniels Real Estate, and to the communities we serve. The crowd applauded as glasses were raised. Catherine's expression was carefully composed, though Sarah could detect her surprise at her husband's announcement. Olivia, standing near Catherine, looked equally stunned. As the formal toast concluded and guests began to mingle again, Alex turned to Sarah, his expression a mixture of shock and joy. "Did you know about this?" he asked. Sarah shook her head. "Your father spoke to me briefly earlier, but he only mentioned wanting me to present to the board next month. Nothing about publicly announcing the foundation today." Alex laughed in amazement. "He never does anything halfway. Once he makes a decision, he commits fully." He squeezed her hand. "This changes everything, Sarah. The foundation, us. It's all becoming real in ways I didn't dare hope for so quickly." As guests began approaching Alex to congratulate him on the new initiative, Sarah found herself momentarily separated from him in the crowd. She stepped back, taking a moment to observe Alex in his element, confident, passionate as he explained his vision to interested guests, occasionally glancing her way with a smile that was meant only for her. Elizabeth Harrison appeared at her side, following her gaze to Alex. "I told you there was something special between you two," the older woman said with satisfaction. "And it seems Richard has recognized it as well, both the connection between you and the value of Alexander's vision." "It's all happened so fast," Sarah admitted. "This weekend has been transformative." "The best journeys often begin unexpectedly," Elizabeth said wisely. "Now come with me. If you're going to be part of Alexander's life, there are some people you should meet. People who will support both of you in the changes ahead." As Elizabeth guided her through the crowd, introducing her to influential figures who could become allies in both Alex's foundation work and their relationship, Sarah felt a growing sense of possibility. This world would never be entirely comfortable for her, but perhaps she didn't need to reject it entirely to remain true to herself and her community. And as the afternoon sun began its slow descent toward evening, casting golden light across the celebration, Sarah caught Alex's eye across the crowd. The look they shared held a promise, that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, no longer pretending, but building something real from what had begun as a deception. 1 month later, Sarah stood before the mirror in her apartment, adjusting the collar of her blazer and checking her appearance one last time. The board presentation at Daniels Real Estate was scheduled for 2 p.m., and despite Alex's reassurances, her stomach was in knots. The past month had been a whirlwind. After returning from the weekend at the Daniels estate, she and Alex had embarked on what he insisted on calling their real first date. Dinner at a small neighborhood restaurant near the community center, followed by a walk through the park. No pretense, no arrangement, just two people getting to know each other outside the pressures of his family and their initial deception. That first date had led to many more. Alex showing up at the center with lunch during her busy days, Sarah introducing him to her favorite bookstore cafe, weekend outings to local markets and community events. With each meeting, the connection between them had deepened, rooted now in genuine understanding rather than a business arrangement. Alex had thrown himself into developing the foundation, spending hours at the community center observing their programs, meeting with staff and participants, understanding the model from the inside out. Sarah had been touched by his genuine interest and respect for her work, and impressed by how quickly he grasped the nuances of community development. Now, a month after Richard's birthday celebration, she was preparing to present the center's model to the full board of Daniels Real Estate, a presentation that could potentially shape the direction of their new foundation and, by extension, impact communities throughout the city. A knock at her door interrupted her nervous preparations. She opened it to find Alex standing there, holding a small gift bag and wearing the warm smile that still made her heart skip. "Ready for the big day?" he asked, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "As ready as I'll ever be," Sarah replied, inviting him in. Though I'm still not convinced your father's board will be receptive to our approach. It's very different from traditional corporate philanthropy. That's precisely why they need to hear it, Alex said confidently. And after your metrics from the center were reviewed by our analytics team, even the most skeptical board members had to acknowledge the results. He handed her the gift bag. A little something for today. Sarah opened it to find a small jewelry box containing elegant gold earrings, simple but beautiful and perfectly suited to her taste. Alex, these are lovely, but you don't need to. I know I don't need to, he interrupted gently. I wanted to. Not because you need anything to impress the board, you'll do that on your own merit. But because I'm proud of you and what we're building together. Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. She put on the earrings, touched by how well he had come to know her preferences in such a short time. How are things with your parents? She asked as they prepared to leave. It was a complicated subject, one they had discussed frequently over the past month. Alex sighed. Better with my father than my mother. Dad has fully embraced the foundation concept, especially after seeing the financial projections showing how community investment could actually enhance property values and create new market opportunities. And Catherine? She's adapting, Alex said diplomatically. I think she was initially more upset about being blindsided at the party than about the foundation itself. She's invited us to dinner next weekend, which I consider progress. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Us? Both of us. Yes, Alex confirmed with a small smile. I told her I wouldn't come without you. I think she's finally accepting that you're not a temporary situation. The drive to Daniel's real estate headquarters was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The imposing glass tower in the heart of the financial district reflected the midday sun, a physical embodiment of the wealth and power the Daniels family had accumulated over generations. In the elevator ascending to the executive floor, Alex took Sarah's hand. Remember, he said quietly, you belong here. Your expertise and experience are exactly what this company needs, even if some of them don't know it yet. The boardroom was intimidating, all dark wood and leather chairs surrounding a massive table, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. The board members, predominantly older men in expensive suits, were already seated when they arrived. Richard Daniels sat at the head of the table, with Catherine somewhat surprisingly present in a chair to his right. Sarah recognized a few faces from the birthday celebration, including Robert Harrison, who gave her an encouraging nod. Olivia's father was there as well, regarding her with neutral curiosity. Ms. Johnson, welcome. Richard greeted her formally, though with a warmth that hadn't been present during their first meeting. We're looking forward to your presentation on the community investment model. For the next hour, Sarah presented the community center's approach, methodology, and results. She explained their focus on mutual benefit rather than charity, showed the metrics demonstrating improved outcomes across education, employment, housing stability, and public safety, and outlined how similar principles could be applied to corporate community engagement. Throughout the presentation, she remained poised and confident, drawing on years of experience pitching to potential donors and partners. Alex watched from the side of the room, pride evident in his expression as she fielded increasingly engaged questions from the board members. The return on investment figures are particularly compelling, noted the company's CFO, studying the financial projections. These aren't just social benefits, there are tangible business advantages to this approach. Precisely, Sarah confirmed. When communities thrive, property values stabilize, local businesses grow, and new markets emerge. Strategic community investment creates shared value that benefits both the community and the company. By the time she concluded, even the most skeptical board members were leaning forward with interest. Richard Daniels sat back in his chair, a satisfied expression on his face. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for a most illuminating presentation, he said when she finished. I believe you've given us much to consider as we develop the foundation's strategic direction. After the board meeting adjourned, Richard approached Sarah and Alex in the hallway. Impressive work, Ms. Johnson. The board was clearly engaged. Thank you, Mr. Daniels, Sarah replied. I appreciate the opportunity to share our model. Sarah, Richard corrected with a small smile. I think we've moved beyond such formalities, don't you? He turned to his son. Alexander, the executive committee would like to meet briefly about the leadership structure for the foundation. Would you join us for a few minutes? As Alex followed his father back toward the boardroom, Catherine approached Sarah, her expression unreadable. Would you join me for tea in my husband's office? She asked, more a statement than a question. I believe we have some things to discuss. Surprised but curious, Sarah followed Catherine to Richard's expansive corner office. A staff member had already prepared tea on a small side table by the window. Catherine gestured for Sarah to sit, then poured tea into fine porcelain cups with practiced elegance. For a moment she was silent, seemingly gathering her thoughts. "My son is in love with you," she said finally, her directness catching Sarah off guard. "I've known Alexander his entire life, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Sarah remained silent, unsure how to respond to this unexpected opening. "I had other hopes for his future," Catherine continued, her voice carefully controlled. "A partnership with a family we've known for generations, someone who understands our world inherently." "Someone like Olivia?" Sarah said quietly. Catherine nodded. "Yes." It seemed like the natural course. She sipped her tea before continuing. "But I've come to realize that what seems natural isn't always what's right. My son has chosen you quite definitively, and Richard has thrown his support behind both your relationship and this foundation project." She set down her cup, meeting Sarah's gaze directly. "I won't pretend this is the future I envisioned. But I raised Alexander to be independent and strong-minded. I can hardly complain when he exhibits exactly those qualities." "Mrs. Daniels?" "Catherine," she corrected, echoing her husband's earlier adjustment. "If you're to be part of my son's life, we should at least be on a first-name basis." Sarah nodded, a small smile forming. "Catherine then. I want you to know that I never intended for any of this to happen. What began as an arrangement has become something I never expected." "Love rarely follows our careful plans," Catherine observed, surprising Sarah with a hint of warmth in her voice. "I fell in love with Richard against my parents' wishes, though that's a story for another time." She straightened in her chair, her natural poise reasserting itself. "I hope you understand that my concerns come from wanting to protect my son and our family legacy. This foundation project represents a significant shift in our company's direction." "I do understand," Sarah assured her. "Change is always uncomfortable, especially when it affects something you've spent your life building." Catherine studied her thoughtfully. "You're quite perceptive. Perhaps that's part of what Alexander sees in you." She paused before adding, "Your presentation today was impressive. You clearly know your field." Coming from Catherine, this was high praise indeed. "Thank you. I won't pretend we'll become best friends overnight," Catherine continued frankly. "But for Alexander's sake, and for the success of this foundation that clearly means so much to both of you, I'm willing to try to understand your world a little better, if you'll make the same effort with ours." Sarah felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Not complete acceptance, perhaps, but an opening, a willingness to find common ground that she hadn't expected from the formidable Catherine Daniels. "I think that's a wonderful starting point," Sarah replied honestly. Their conversation was interrupted by the office door opening. Alex entered, his expression shifting from concern to surprise as he took in the peaceful scene of the two women having tea. "Everything okay in here?" he asked cautiously. "Perfectly fine, darling," Catherine assured him, rising gracefully. "Sarah and I were just getting better acquainted." She gathered her purse, preparing to leave. "I'll see you both for dinner on Saturday. 7 o'clock, don't be late." With that, she departed, leaving Alex staring after her in amazement. "What just happened?" he asked once the door closed behind his mother. Sarah laughed softly. "I think we just reached a tentative truce." Alex moved to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. "Well, that's unexpected good news to add to an already excellent day. The executive committee has approved the foundation structure. I'll be serving as executive director, with full autonomy over program development." "Alex, that's wonderful," Sarah exclaimed, squeezing his hand. "It's everything you've been working toward." "Almost everything," he corrected, his expression growing more serious. "There's one more thing I want to discuss with you." The shift in his tone made Sarah's heart beat faster. "What is it?" "The foundation needs a program director. Someone with extensive experience in community development, someone who understands how to build effective programs from the ground up." His eyes held hers steadily. "I'd like to offer you the position." Sarah stared at him in surprise. "Me? But the community center would continue under your guidance," Alex explained quickly. "You've built an incredible team there, and with proper funding from the foundation they could expand their work. As program director, you'd oversee not just your center, but the development of similar programs throughout the city." Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities. The foundation's resources could multiply the impact of their work many times over, reaching communities they had never been able to serve before. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "It's a huge change." "Of course," Alex agreed. "Take all the time you need." He hesitated before adding, "Just so you know, this offer is completely separate from our personal relationship. The board approved the position and your candidacy based solely on your qualifications and today's presentation." "Thank you for making that clear," Sarah said, touched by his understanding of how important it was to her that any professional opportunity stand on its own merit. As they left the Daniels building together, stepping out into the late afternoon sunshine, Sarah felt a profound sense of how much had changed in just 1 month. What had begun as a deception, a weekend arrangement to help her community center and spare Alex from his parents' matchmaking, had transformed into something neither of them could have anticipated. "What are you thinking?" Alex asked as they walked toward his car. Sarah looked up at him, at the face that had become so dear to her in such a short time. "I'm thinking about beginnings. How sometimes the most important journeys start in unexpected ways." Alex smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Like a billionaire hiring a community center director to pretend to be his girlfriend?" "Exactly like that," Sarah laughed. "Who could have predicted where it would lead?" "I had my hopes from the beginning," Alex admitted, pulling her closer. "From that first day at the center watching you work, I knew there was something special about you. I just needed an excuse to get to know you better." "So the whole arrangement was just an elaborate ploy?" Sarah teased. "More like creating an opportunity," Alex suggested with a grin. "One that worked out better than I could have imagined." As they reached his car, Alex paused, turning to face her fully. "Sarah Johnson, meeting you has changed everything. My relationship with my parents, my vision for the company, my whole future. Whatever you decide about the foundation position, I want you to know that loving you has been the most unexpected and wonderful surprise of my life." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes, moved by the sincerity in his voice. "I love you too," she said simply, the words feeling right and true as she spoke them for the first time. Alex's face lit up with joy as he pulled her into his arms, kissing her there on the sidewalk outside his family's company headquarters, neither of them caring who might see. When they finally broke apart, both a little breathless, Sarah smiled up at him. "You know what this means, don't you?" "What?" Alex asked, his arms still around her waist. "I won our arrangement after all," she said with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "The community center got both donations and I still managed to win over the intimidating billionaire." Alex laughed, the sound free and happy. "You most certainly did. And I've never been happier to lose at anything in my life." As they drove away from the towering Daniels building toward Sarah's neighborhood, the contrast between their worlds was still evident, the gleaming financial district gradually giving way to the more modest but vibrant community Sarah had dedicated herself to serving. But instead of seeing that contrast as a barrier, Sarah now recognized it as an opportunity, a chance to bridge two worlds that needed each other more than either had realized. The arrangement that had brought them together was long since fulfilled, but the journey it had started was just beginning. And as Sarah glanced at Alex, his profile illuminated by the golden afternoon light, she knew it would be a journey worth taking, unexpected, challenging at times, but ultimately more rewarding than either of them could have imagined when they first made their deal in that coffee shop just a few short weeks ago. Sometimes, Sarah reflected, the most beautiful love stories begin with practical arrangements rather than love at first sight. And sometimes the most meaningful connections form when we're brave enough to step outside our familiar worlds and see life through someone else's eyes. As if reading her thoughts, Alex reached over and took her hand, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they had been doing it for years rather than weeks. "So, Ms. Johnson," he said with a smile in his voice, "ready for our next adventure?" Sarah squeezed his hand, her heart full of certainty despite all the uncertainty ahead. "Absolutely, Mr. Daniels. Lead the way." But as they continued through the city streets together, Sarah knew they would find their path forward not with one leading and one following, but side by side, two people from different worlds who had found in each other not just love, but a shared vision of what might be possible when heart and purpose align.